Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. Today we're continuing our look at whether the battalion box sets available for the various Warhammer the Old World factions offer improved value post FAQ/errata. Only today we aren't quite, because we're looking at a box which came out at around the same time, or at least was available for pre-order. That's right, today we're turning our attention to the battalion box set for Grand Cathay. So what do you get in this box? Well, you are getting 50 models. 30 Jade Warriors, 10 Lancers, and 2 Cathayan Grand Cannons, which can also be built as Fire Rain rocket batteries. So what we're seeing here is an example really of 2 core slots and 2 special, as opposed to containing stuff from the rare slot. Now, I think Cathay is quite different when you look at it on the whole, however, and something we do need to bear in mind is we're looking at a very, very restricted roster. There's not that many units available to players of Grand Cathay, so to some extent we don't have the choice to consider if we're going to run this army as we would with Empire, Orcs and Goblins, Dwarves, whatever it may be, that don't have the long history in the world of Warhammer. Let's start by looking at the Jade Warriors. So we're told that this can be assembled as a single unit, units of 15 warriors or 3 units of 10, each with appropriate command options, and they're going to be armed either with hand weapon and shield or a halberd. I think it's quite interesting actually as infantry that they don't have the shield and halberd option. So on the face of it, this does make them less versatile than other units that do have access to hand weapon and shield along with a different weapon which they can chop and change between during the course of an ongoing combat. They are armed with heavy armour, of course, so heavy armour and shield for a 4-up armour save becomes 3-up using the parry rule, and they've got a natural reroll of 1 on their armour save. So unless you've got some armour pen, these lads looking pretty useful. Their weapon skill 4, they are only strength toughness 3, however, so they're probably not going to be doing a lot of damage. But let's face it, in the new world that is, or was, or however they want to call it, infantry play a really key role, particularly core infantry, because these are the lads that are going to be, or lasses, I should say, or whatever they models represent. These are the figures that will be getting you your objective points throughout the game, particularly if you've got those capture and control points on your particular game, as opposed to Dominion or taking down enemy baggage carts. Now, at time of recording, well, the only way to get the infantry and the cavalry, which we'll come on to in a second, from this box set is to buy the battalion. So that does make it, I suppose, incredibly worth it, because if you want the figures, there's no other way of getting them. However, looking back again at those comments around small roster, this does really add to the fact, I think, that, well, what else is there when it comes to core slots? Core is important. You've got to take those infantry at the moment, so it's well worth it. There is, I think, some builds out there which are heavily based around cavalry, coming in at just under the 500 point mark level, just to get them through the various new composition rules that Games Workshop have released for combined arms and the like. But yeah, pretty useful, I think, as a starting point for someone newly entering the army. Let's move on. Let's talk about the cavalry. So you get 10 Jade Lancers, which can either be assembled as 1 unit of 10 or 2 units of 5. Again, each with their own command options of champion, standard bearer, and musician. These are an interesting heavy cavalry option, I think. Being able to fight in 2 ranks really makes them a bit different, But what they do miss out on is they don't have the devastating charge effect that other knights have using regular lances. So on a model-for-model basis, they're less likely on the charge to do the same sort of damage, but they can be deployed in blocks that have a narrower frontage. So I think if you're taking a block of regular knights, for example, that's not Bretonnians, you're not going to be wanting to go 5 wide. If you're going to be going 6, 7, 8 wide, depending on how many figures you've got in the unit. Whereas the knights can easily be going 4, 5 wide, getting the full impact of everyone getting involved with their special lances. Very much like the infantry, I think increasingly that there is definitely a good role for cavalry still. They are going to be able to pick up weakened units of infantry from opponents. They're going to be able to move around the table, getting those domination points at the end of games. That's going to be really useful for them. Getting into enemy baggage trains, that's 250 points you're potentially picking up just there. Speed hasn't been taken out of the game. We've just seen an increased role for infantry, an important role for infantry. But cavalry, I don't think, are going away. All that's happening is they are changing. Again, so you can use the Jade Lancers as core. You can also have them, I think, as special. So they come out of various different cost points, but fundamentally, these are your only cavalry option. So you probably want to get your hands on them, and there's no other way currently. I have no doubt that eventually we will see them released as a standalone box along with the Jade Warriors. And I'd fully expect to be seeing similar savings, a box set of 110 for all of the models in the battalion box, as against what I imagine will be about £155, £160 for them as separate entities. Finally, let's turn our attention to the Cathayan Grand Cannons. Now, they're simply really, really good. So what you've got is, in their Grand Cannon version, they can be equipped with an Ogre loader. It gives them a bit of extra resilience, but most importantly, gives you the option to fire twice in a turn. Now, you can only do this once, but if you get turn 1, and you've got 2, 3 of these Grand Cannons, it means that you have got a really, really good opportunity to absolutely batter key opposing units. So if you're up against Empire, for example, and I have seen examples of this happening in battle reports that have been shown online. Cathay versus Empire. Cathay goes first. Cathay fires its guns twice. It knocks out all the artillery of the Empire. The Empire then has very little left that can deal with some of the other big ticket items in the Cathayan army. By that I mean the really, really powerful hot air balloons. Sky Lanterns are just ridiculously good when backed by a battery of really useful artillery to take down anything that might pose the remotest threat to those Sky Lanterns. So I think you will be definitely wanting some artillery, and it's a great way of getting it because you want those, you want the Lancers, you want the Warriors, let's face it. There has been some criticism overall that effectively the Cathayan army is built around 2 really good unit types, the Sky Lanterns and the artillery, and everything else is a bit mediocre. And I'd agree with that from what I've seen so far, having played just the one game, however, against Cathay. The Jade Warriors, they're not all that. They're pretty resilient, but they're not really doing a lot of damage. The Lancers, they're not as powerful as regular knights. They're not as scary, but they do a job. I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about here are going to be stalwarts of Grand Cathay armies, along with the Lanterns. We're not expecting any new models coming out for Cathay either. So my understanding is Games Workshop are talking about when the second Arcane Journal comes out, they're going to be integrating Empire troops. So that's an interesting thing. So that will open the door potentially to some quite interesting combos. It'll get that missile fire in as an opportunity. So if you want crossbowmen or things like that, I suppose we will have to wait and see. But coming back to that original question, is the Battalion box set worth it for Grand Cathay? Yes, I think everything in this box is currently, if you want to play Grand Cathay and you want Games Workshop models, you're going to want everything that's in this box and to be getting that on the table. I know some people are out there talking about getting a couple of these box sets and whether they multiply out. Interesting. So some people are talking about, I want 3 of the artillery pieces. So at the minute, that means you have to get the battalion box set. Going forward, that won't necessarily be the case. Blocks of infantry, I've seen units of about 20 strong, 20 plus a detachment, so might want 2 units, might not. Very much depends on what build you're going, but if you're going heavy down the warrior route, heavy down the lancer route, you might be persuaded to pick up a second box. But I think as a core, 1 is certainly a starting point and one that a lot of people will want to do. So, although we can't compare here to pre-errata, Grand Cathay Battalion box set, I think it looks pretty good. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much for listening. I hope you found this video useful. If so, do consider a like and subscribe. It's one of the best ways of supporting a small channel such as this one. Thank you once again for listening. I am Return to the Old World. Have a great day.